recording, and we will be able to post this to the website later for anyone who was not able to attend. But Alex will kick us off and run us through the Nonprofit Access Grant Project and Reimbursement overview. So I will turn it over to Alex.
Hey all. So I'm Alex Fort. I'm the IT director. I was previously the product owner for the grant system. So kind of doing a dual role here at the moment. And as Laura said, you see nonprofit in the title here, but this will cover everyone. And also know that this is not the only opportunity you're going to have to get things right, right? So we'll be available obviously via email and Laura via phone. We're probably going to have a follow-up on this because right now where we're at in the grant system is we're finalizing some last bits for fiscal regarding reimbursements. So we haven't actually created your projects as of today. My hope is to be ready to do that by the end of the week. We just want to make sure that when you submit a reimbursement, it gets all the way to fiscal and all the way back to you in the form of a check. So we're in the process of just finalizing some testing with them. So we'll have probably another opportunity once those are all ready to go. So if anyone has questions, don't worry, not the only time we'll talk about it. It's an ongoing conversation with everybody as far as getting everybody set up straight. So one thing to note for today is the access to the grant system is the same as it was for the application. Okay, so the reimbursement or the project portion of the grant system today is tied to whoever did the application. So if that's you, great. If it's someone else, let us know. The process to go forward with that, if you're going to be managing the project and someone else did the application, is we'll just need to get you added as a user, which you will do and we'll give you a hand with. So let Laura know if it's someone different and we can follow up with you. But then once you have access to the grant system, we can assign you essentially as the owner, if you will, of the project itself. So the point person for the project. So any questions about that, let us know, but that's how the system is designed. So just know the person who had the application, who created it and submitted it, will have access to the project by default. If someone else needs access, let us know. Okay. All right. So first thing here, get to the right screen, pretty quick. We'll go a little bit over projects, and then reimbursements is really the bulk of what you all will be concerned about in the project portion of the grant system at this time. There will probably be other things coming down the road related to reporting and things like that, how you guys do your status reports. At the moment, that's unchanged. But for today, we're just going to really focus on reimbursements and that whole process. So I already mentioned this a little bit. Here's the URL for the grant system if you haven't been there before. Obviously, these applications were received, so everyone who was awarded a grant based on their application or grant funds will be creating the project directly out of your application. Okay, so again, exact same system, just kind of two sides of the coin, if you will. So when you log into the grant system, you will now see two areas. You will see your grant application as an applicant, and later this week, you will see the My Grant Project section, which will include your grant project, which we will be managing then going forward. Pretty simple. If there are other available grants over time, you will see them appear here. And if you do other applications or have other projects, they will also appear within these windows for you. When you see a project, the first thing you'll see here is the details page. Okay, now since we have two groups here that have grants applications in, these tabs might be a little different, okay, based on your grant. If you remember, if you were part of the original webinar we did for the grant application portion of things, These are configurable by grant managers. So you may see 4 or 5 of them, you may see 6 or 7 of them based on the options that were chosen by your grant manager. So if you log in, and if I remember, telemedicine did have a tab there for communities served, you might see another tab here. But for USF, nothing's wrong. Those are just the tabs that we chose to use for your grant application. So that can vary based on your grant, just know that. And then what you see here is everything that came over from the application itself. Now for grant applicants, this is going to be all read-only, okay? You won't be able to change anything in this. The grant manager, if the dollar amount changed from what you applied for to what you were awarded, they can update that when we're creating the project. We can update the budget for you so that that reflects the actual number, because I know in some cases that happens. But if you have any questions about any of the data here, please contact your grant manager to follow up and get that updated. This looks almost exactly like the application details page, except with a couple of extra pieces in there that we'll add that are mostly related to you as an applicant being able to get paid. So there's that. The tabs, as I mentioned, they're going to be organized or the pages will be organized as tabs. As I said, the number of tabs may vary. So don't worry if something's off or different from what you see on here. That can happen from grant to grant based on the options chosen. So we'll go through the ones for the USF grant here quickly. It's pretty straightforward. We mentioned the details. All comes from the application. Read only for you as an applicant. If there are questions or these numbers are not quite correct for the grant award or the match amount, let Laura know and she can get them updated for you. The contacts page is something that you can edit as an applicant. So you can add or remove contacts on this page as it changes. You know, there's probably going to be a number of contacts from the application process. There may be a few more based on who plays what role in the grants project. So you can add them there, and then we'll have those as a reference on our side. In other words, you know, Sam and Laura would, or Dennis, if they want to see who to contact about a particular topic in the project. And then the budget screen. So this will be probably, you know, one of 2 main pages you'll spend time on here as an applicant. The budget, again, comes over from the actual application, which may be edited once it's created as a project, as I said, because I know those dollar amounts may be a little bit different from what you actually asked for when you get to the award. So based on the grant agreement, these numbers should reflect what that final grant agreement showed. You'll notice up here that there's a budget amendment and a budget note. The budgets can be versioned over the life of the project, and we'll get into this in a second. But we'll keep track of that, and you'll see that at the bottom of the budget page for any changes that do happen. The main part here that you'll want to note is that you'll see these pending, approved, and available columns, right? So as you're going through your project, submitting reimbursements and getting those approved, you'll see these numbers update over the course of your project and reflect where you are based on what you've submitted and what's been approved by fiscal ultimately. So if you want a quick status update of where you're at, you'll be able to see that here on the budget page. There's not much you can do as an applicant on here, except see where things are at. But just know that this will update as you go along through your process of getting things approved and paid. The 2 things to note, right, that we'll talk a little bit about here is with the budgets, as most of you know, there's a variance, a percentage variance for each grant, well, each grant and each grant project. So within the budget page where I was showing those versions, if I go back here, You'll note that this one is the original budget and this is dated on 7/21/2022. If someone does a budget adjustment, which is the amount within the variance, then that will be reflected. If someone does a budget amendment, then that will also be reflected. And at the bottom of that budget screen, you'll see all versions over time. Okay. So the budget adjustment is something that the grant manager can do. That's the amount, the percentage allowed to be moved around within your budget within what I think everyone knows as the variance. Okay, so if it's 10% on a certain amount, then the grant manager can move money around as everyone sees fit within that variance. If you go through the entire variance, one thing that's a little different from your previous process is that you will not be able to submit a reimbursement request if you don't have the money available in, say, a particular budget category. Okay, so if all of the money is spent in a category, in the past, you'd be able to still send in a spreadsheet and then talk about it with your grant manager after the fact, or they would ask you about it. In this system now, it's going to stop and it's going to give you a warning. It'll just say, hey, you're out of money in category X. Please contact your grant manager. If is money still allowed in the variance, an amount still allowed in the variance, they can move money around for you. If you're at a point where a budget amendment is required, then again, you'll have to ask that of the grant manager to do that. Now, the budget amendment process is a more formal process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but that ultimately involves an updated or a new grant agreement that's signed off by the commission. That's in a scenario where you might have a pretty significant budget change or scope change within your project. But both of those things will be tracked in the system, and both of them have to start with your grant manager. So just know that when you're going through your budget process, if you don't have a dollar amount within a category in the grant system, it won't allow you to submit that. It'll ask you to check with your grant manager. If they agree that you can move some money around within your budget into another category, they can do that, and then you'd be able to submit the reimbursement request. Any questions about that in particular? That's something that will be a little bit new for everybody. All right, let us know if you do. Just know it'll stop you, and then you'll just need to contact your grant manager in order to move forward. Okay. Reimbursements page. This is probably going to be your main page most of the time. You'll see a couple of different things here. There's an expense for a single budget category and an expense for a multiple budget category. And then down here, you'll see the status of any reimbursements that have been submitted. Okay. If you, by default, it's going to show the not submitted results. There's nothing in here right now, but you can create and save reimbursement requests over the course of maybe several weeks. And they will just, as you save them, they will appear in here. And you'll have a group of them then that might not be submitted yet. You can do that, and then you can submit them all at once if you like, or you can submit them one by one as you go forward. Once they're submitted, they'll appear in the next tab. So if they're submitted, they'll appear here, and then you'll see what the current status of them is. If anything's denied, it'd be there, and if anything's approved, it'll be there. But by default, you're always going to see the not submitted tab first. Idea being that you're just going to have a spot where you can keep track of kind of what needs to yet be done, right? So if we look at a single budget category option, you can think of what we're doing here as akin to filling out an expense report, right? Over the course of the project, you will have many reimbursement requests that go through. Many of them might be quite simple. A single budget category is what we're talking about here in terms of the expense category. And what that means is if you have an expense that is just for labor or just for equipment, you can enter it here. You'll choose the budget type. I'm sorry, the budget category. I just realized that might read a little wrong. The budget category it should read. So if this drop down will show what is in your budget categories in your project, labor, the categories that are all set up for you already. They will all appear here. Then you enter your grant funds requested, you enter your match and a description, and then you have to attach a supporting document before you can save it. Okay, so nothing can be submitted without a supporting document. I frequently think of it as a receipt, but it can be more than that because there's justifications also that I know people include with their reimbursement requests. So just know you have to have all of that in there in order to save it. And if there's nothing in match, for example, if it's just a request for grant funds, you'll just need to enter a 0 in that field. We're making sure that everyone goes through each field as you create these, just to have an extra look at everything and make sure you've got everything where you want it before it's submitted. If something is submitted and it's in some way incorrect or wrong, the recourse for the grant managers is to deny it. So if there's something that you see that is incorrect and you accidentally submitted it, or the grant manager sees something, they will deny that request. They'll contact you, I'm sure, first, and then you'll just need to create a new reimbursement request that is correct for that. Okay, something a little bit different also. Similarly, for a multiple expense category, we do know that some people will group things together. So it is possible for you to add values for more than one budget category. This is that screen. That's the second button that you saw there, the single expense or the multiple expense. And in here, again, just enter your numbers, your values in here for whatever this particular request will include, and then make sure that you attach your supporting documents as well. Okay. And those supporting documents should include presumably receipts and explanations for any of those items that you're requesting. And if there's something that's not there, again, the grant manager may contact you, but you'll need to have all of that together in this system to even save it. It will require that you've attached that file. So the approvals process, so you know there are a couple of steps. One is with the grant managers, and you'll see a couple of statuses as an applicant in that budget screen. Mostly what you'll see is in progress, okay? Because we have a multi-step process within the PSC to approve and ultimately pay the requests. So there's 2 steps by the grant management team, and there's 2 steps by fiscal. You won't see a reimbursement in approved status until it's completed by fiscal. Okay. And based on the grant and how the schedule works for everybody, obviously that may take a couple of weeks. So if you have questions, you can reach out to your grant manager, and see where something's at. But just know that if something is pending or in progress, it will take a little bit of time to go all the way through everything on our end. And then, as I said, the reimbursement status, you'll see that as we go through the process, you'll see what's submitted. In the submitted, you'll see whether or not it's been approved or it's pending or it's in progress. Once it's approved, it'll go out of this tab and into the approved tab, and we'll just track that over the life of the project. And then also you'll see that status. Once that is approved by fiscal, then you'll see these values update in the budget screen as well. Okay, so that'll be going progressively over the course of the project. This is also where you can see, when you're thinking about those reimbursements, what you have left in a particular category, right? So again, if you have a request for something where you don't have enough in a particular category or you need to move some money around, that starts with your grant manager. They can make those adjustments within the variance. Or if need be, they can work with you to do a budget amendment, which is the big, more formal process here at the PSC, which happens occasionally. And that's pretty much it. You know, the main part for you as an applicant is going to be that budget screen and then the reimbursements process. After that, you know, the check will be cut, that will be received, and you'll have those statuses updated within the grant system. I'll go back just to this screen and see, you know, what questions you, pretty straightforward within the system, but it's different. So does anyone have any questions about really the budget and the reimbursements pieces in the grants project? You can use the chat too if you like. We can have that open.
I have a question. This is Judy Keel from Access Community Health Centers. Thank you very much for the overview of the system. Sometimes online things are confusing, so I appreciate the the run through. But
Yeah.
my question is not really about, isn't particularly about the system, but are we supposed to be getting a contractor or anything, or because I know we haven't gotten anything yet, so I'm just curious, like what the process is before we're able to reimbursement.
I'll let Laura answer that one.
Well, so there should be, for all nonprofit grantees on the call, there should be grant agreements in place. For the telemedicine equipment grants, those are in, sorry, what was that?
Yeah, that's what it is for the telemedicine.
Okay, for telemedicine, those are in the process and should be out soon. I'm not sure if Dennis is on the call, but I think the plan for the grant agreements for the telemedicine grants is that those should be going out next week, I believe.
Yeah, they've all been drafted. I just need to get approvals, and then we'll start sending them out. I think next week is likely.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will, if have the project pages ready to go Friday, by the time the grant agreements go up, I'll have my project set up as well.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
And then we had a couple questions in chat. One was, are expenses reviewed on a rolling basis, or is there a deadline each month, quarter to get expenses in? Again, for the nonprofit, it's on a rolling basis, no deadline. Some people have submitted those monthly, some more quarterly, some have submitted just twice a year. Again, Dennis, I don't know if you have anything else to add for the telemedicine side for that.
On telemedicine, our hope actually is that we'll get one reimbursement request for 100%. You know, it goes along with the purchase of the equipment. But if we do have expenses submitted incrementally, we'll just deal with them as they come in. But again, I would emphasize the real desire is that we just get one request to take care of the whole project.
And then we had another question, if you can have the link to the page where this webinar will be posted. And so my plan was to post it to the nonprofit access grant page on our website, as well as the telemedicine grant page on our website. Again, those won't be posted yet. It might take a day or two, but I put the links to both of those web pages in the chat.
And you'll have our contact information in there as well. So I'd say start with Laura. If it's system related, you could start with either of us. That's fine. And as I mentioned, if anybody has if anyone doesn't yet have an account with the grant system, we covered that in the other webinar, but we can review that. And if you let us know that you have not yet created an account in the grant system, we can be available to assist you. It's the only part that is not super duper simple. It's not very hard, but it's not super duper simple because the system also, the application portion of the system anyway, also works with IRF. So there's a little step in there where you verify your IRF account. We don't, it's different on the project side, but the grant system as a whole, parts of it, the applications, as you know, also go to IRF. So that's the only part that's a little bit funky, and happy to walk you through it if anybody has questions or is just struggling to get that done. So any other questions for the group? So far, so good. Okay. Well, so Laura, I think you and I will touch base this week and just kind of verify when we'll finally create the projects. And then we can send some communication out to the group. And then once we do that, we can also let people know, you know, when we'll be available for anybody who has questions as they're getting started or getting logged into the system. So my hope is to have everything squared away by the end of the week. Sounds like if Dennis is still getting grant agreements out, maybe we'll turn things on Monday or Tuesday perhaps of next week and get everybody started then. But I'm available for questions, as is Laura. So just let us know. Laura, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just contact information is there on the screen, so please reach out to me if you have any questions related to the grant. As Alex mentioned, I'd be more the program side of it. So if it's in the weeds
Yep.
about IT stuff, I'll probably have to follow up with Alex, but I'll
That'll
get back
be
to you either way.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.